this filthy black monkey sit his dirty ass in a first-class seat meant for real Americans.
Again, you know, what do you should do, Thomas? Get into the Vicari.
Sure, can you think you're gonna do on other side?
You hear me, you black boy? This gentleman is taking 1A.
Caleb Grant, 44, charcoal suit, didn't move.
Ma'am, I paid for this seat.
Honey, his kind belongs up here. Yours smells like the back of a bus.
She snapped her fingers in his face.
Move before I have you drag past every passenger on this plane.
Bradley smirked.
Go on, boy. Shoo.
Row 3 lifted a phone. Row 14 followed. Nobody said a word. But by sundown, one call from seat 34E would make sure they never forgot his name. Damn. She picked the wrong passenger. And trust me, she's about to find out the hard way.
4:40 in the morning, Atlanta. The kind of dark where the city hasn't decided yet if it's still last night or already tomorrow. Caleb Grant stood in front of a bathroom mirror in a modest Buckhead condo, tying a navy tie with the muscle memory of a man who'd done it 10,000 times. On the wall behind him, 3 photos told a whole life in 3 frames. A handshake with the governor of Georgia, a Morehouse diploma, 2003, and the oldest one, a skinny boy in church clothes standing next to his father, a mechanic in a grease-stained uniform. Atlanta, 1986. He kissed that last photo, same as every morning. Then he grabbed his laptop bag and walked out. Caleb Grant was the founder and CEO of Grantford Hospitality Group. 31 boutique hotels across the South, revenue north of $400 million a year. Most people who stayed in his hotels had never heard his name, and he liked it that way. Today, he was flying to Denver to finalize a $120 million partnership with Meridian Vale Hotels, the biggest deal of his career. And he'd chosen this flight on purpose. Altaview Airlines, Flight 1202. Because Altaview was Meridian Vale's preferred carrier, and because Grantford was quietly considering Altaview for a massive corporate travel contract of its own. He wanted to see, with his own eyes, the kind of company he was about to climb into bed with. At the gate, the agent scanned his boarding pass, paused, scanned it again. She looked up at him, at his charcoal suit, the hoodie he'd pulled over it against the morning chill, and asked, politely, if she could just verify his ID one more time. He handed it over without a word. She handed it back, asked for it a second time. He handed it over a second time. He didn't sigh, didn't roll his eyes. He just reached into his jacket, pulled out a small leather notebook, and wrote one line. Then he walked down the jet bridge. Behind him, a man was already shouting into a phone. Bradley Whitaker, mid-50s, flushed red, rumpled blazer, Altaview loyalty tag dangling from his carry-on. Yeah, supposed to be first class. They bumped me. I'm gonna fix it. These people always try something. His eyes tracked Caleb's back the whole way down the tunnel. In the first-class cabin, Ashley Morgan was already working. 11 years of service. It said so right on her name tag. She greeted every passenger in 1A through 2D by name. Mr. Whitaker, lovely to see you again. Mrs. Harrington, welcome back. Champagne or orange juice? Warm nuts or no warm nuts? She knew them. She smiled at them. Except for 2A. Caleb sat down. Ashley set a welcome drink on his tray without looking at him. He said thank you. She was already walking away. Next to him in 2B, a quiet white woman in her 40s was reading a thick internal report. Caleb caught the logo on the cover. 2 linked mountains, navy and gold. Meridian Vale Hotels. He almost smiled. Small world. He didn't introduce himself. Not yet. He opened his laptop instead. On his screen, a draft press release. Grantford Meridian Vale Strategic Partnership. $120 million. Below that, a second document, an unsent email, addressed to AltaView's corporate partnerships team. Subject line, Preferred Carrier Agreement, Final Review. His finger hovered over the send button. He'd decided to send it from the air. Symbolic. A signature delivered at 36,000 feet. He didn't send it yet. Bradley Whitaker came storming up the aisle before the doors even closed. "Excuse me, miss, this man is in my seat." Ashley turned, didn't check a manifest, didn't ask for a boarding pass, just looked straight at Caleb. "Sir, there's been a mistake. We need you to move to the back." Caleb, calmly, held up his boarding pass. "Ma'am, seat 2A, checked in 11 hours ago." Ashley barely glanced. "The system says otherwise. Please don't make this difficult." In 2B, the woman in the Meridian Vale report slowly closed her folder. Her eyes narrowed. Her hand drifted toward her pocket, toward her phone. And nobody on that plane had any idea what she was about to record. Ashley didn't lower her voice. If anything, she raised it. "Sir, I've asked you once. I'm not going to ask you again. This seat belongs to Mr. Whitaker. Stand up." Caleb kept his voice level. "Could you please check the manifest again? My name is Caleb Grant. Grant. Seat 2A. Bradley snorted behind her. "Buddy, I fly this route every week. I know this crew. I know this airline. You don't belong up here, and you know it. Just move." He leaned down, close enough that Caleb could smell coffee and cologne on him. "Save yourself the embarrassment, boy." The word landed in the cabin like a dropped glass. A woman in 1D actually winced, but nobody said anything. Ashley leaned in too, close enough that her perfume mixed with Bradley's cologne into something sour. And then she said it. The line that would, within 24 hours, end her career. "Sir, I don't know how you got this ticket, but first class isn't for people like you. Move. Now." The cabin went silent. The kind of silent you only hear on an airplane, where even the hum of the engines seems to politely step aside so the humiliation can take center stage. In 2B, Catherine Ellis pressed record. Her phone was angled down into her lap, screen dimmed, microphone open. She didn't say a word. She just recorded. Caleb's jaw tightened. One flex, then it released. He looked up at Ashley, looked at Bradley, looked past them, into the cabin, where 12 first-class passengers were suddenly very interested in their phones, their magazines, the stitching of their seat backs, anything except his face. He thought for one long second about the email sitting open on his laptop, the one with the send button. Then he thought about his father. And then Captain Donald Hughes came out of the cockpit. Hughes was tall, gray at the temples, the kind of captain who still ironed his own uniform shirts. Ashley had already briefed him on the intercom. He didn't ask Caleb a single question. He didn't look at the boarding pass. He didn't even look at the manifest tablet the purser was holding out to him. He looked at Ashley, and then he looked at Caleb, and he said, "Sir, my crew has made a determination. You can comply, or I can have you removed. And if I have you removed, you'll be on the federal no-fly list by noon. Your choice." Caleb nodded once, slowly. "Captain, could I ask your name, please?" Hughes blinked. "Hughes. Captain Donald Hughes. Why?" "Just wanted to make sure I spelled it right." Hughes's eyes narrowed. He didn't understand. He would, later. Much later. Caleb stood up. He gathered his laptop, his notebook, his contract folder, his unopened welcome drink he set gently back on Ashley's serving tray, as if he were returning something that didn't belong to him. And then he walked, all the way down the aisle, past 2B, where Catherine Ellis's phone was still recording, past row 7, past row 14, past row 22, past the curtain, past the overhead bins stuffed with backpacks and winter coats, all the way to the very last row of the aircraft. Seat 34E, middle seat, last row, back of the plane, right next to the lavatory where the smell of disinfectant hit him before he even sat down. A child in 3C whispered, "Mommy, why is that man moving?" His mother shushed him and pretended to look out the window. Ashley muttered, loud enough for first class to hear, "Finally." Caleb folded himself into 34E. To his right, a young black woman in scrubs, early 20s, textbook open on her lap, highlighter in her teeth. She looked up. Her eyes went wide, then wider. "Mr. Grant?" she whispered. Aren't you the guy on the cover of Forbes Atlanta? My professor made us read your case study last semester." Caleb put one finger gently to his lips, smiled at her. "Not today, I'm not." "What's your name?" "Jasmine. Jasmine Brooks." "Nice to meet you, Jasmine. Nursing?" "Second year. Emory." "Your parents must be proud." Her eyes filled up, just a little. "My mom. Yes, sir." Caleb nodded, opened his laptop, opened his notebook, and started writing. On the notebook page, the one from the gate, there was already one line. 0441, Agent Rivera, Gate B12, ID verification requested twice, no stated reason. Log. He added 3 more, in careful, steady handwriting. 0538, F/A, Ashley Morgan, Seat 2A. Welcome, service skipped, eye contact refused. 0551, F/A. Morgan stated, verbatim, first class isn't for people like you. Witness, passenger seat 2B, white female, mid-40s, Meridian Vale report on lap. 0553, Captain Donald Hughes threatened federal no-fly list placement without reviewing manifest or boarding documentation. 0557, passenger reassigned to 34E, no refund offered, no explanation provided. He closed the notebook, opened his laptop. The draft email was still sitting there. Subject line, Preferred Carrier Agreement, Final Review. He deleted it, retyped one word. Withdrawn. His finger hovered over send. And then he stopped. Not yet, he murmured, barely moving his lips. Not until I have everything. Up front, Bradley Whitaker was laughing into his champagne, calling his wife. Yeah, babe, told you I'd fix it. These people always try stuff. Nah, the crew handled it. Guy didn't even fight back. Classic. Ashley refilled his glass and laughed along with him. In 2B, Catherine Ellis stopped recording. She had enough. The flight was 3 hours. Caleb worked the whole way. He answered emails. He reviewed the Meridian Vale contract one final time, line by line. Every margin note, every clause, every dollar figure. At hour 2, Jasmine shyly offered him her bottle of water. She hadn't touched it. He thanked her by name, asked about her textbook, asked who her professor was. Small kindness. The kind a man gives a stranger when he has nothing else to give. She would remember it for the rest of her life. Somewhere over Kansas, Catherine Ellis got up from 2B, walked the entire length of the plane under the pretense of using the rear lavatory. On her way back, she slowed beside 34E, slid a business card under the corner of Caleb's tray table, kept walking, didn't look back. Caleb picked it up, read the front. Catherine Ellis, Regional Vice President, Meridian Vale Hotels. He turned it over, handwritten in blue ink. I saw everything. I have video. Call me when we land. K. He read it twice, folded it once, slid it into the back of his notebook. Then, for the first time since Atlanta, he let himself exhale. Outside the window, the sun was climbing over the Rockies. Inside 34E, a very quiet man was quietly building a very loud case.
And 3 feet away, in 34D, Jasmine Brooks was watching him and starting to understand that she was sitting next to something she didn't fully recognize yet.
Yo, hold up. Pause. If that was me, I'd have snapped, fam. Straight up. But this man? He's in the back row, taking notes like a lawyer. Not mad. Collecting. Imagine being her right now, laughing up there in first class, having no idea what's sitting in seat 34E. The wheels kissed Denver asphalt at 9:18 in the morning. The seatbelt sign chimed off, and Ashley Morgan, like clockwork, took her position at the front of the cabin to perform her ritual. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thank you, Mr. Whitaker. See you next week. Bye-bye. Every passenger in first class got a smile, a name, a little touch on the shoulder.
Bradley Whitaker got an extra bright one. She even leaned in and murmured something that made him laugh. Then economy started filing out, and Ashley's smile went on autopilot. When Caleb Grant passed her in the galley, she didn't look at him, didn't see him. He was already heir to her. Caleb stopped, just for a second, just long enough to turn his head and speak, very quietly, very clearly. Ashley, 11 years. I'll remember that. She rolled her eyes. Sir, please keep moving. He kept moving. At the end of the jet bridge, Catherine Ellis was waiting. She'd hung back on purpose, letting the first-class passengers clear out, letting Bradley Whitaker disappear into the terminal with his rolling suitcase and his loud phone call. Now she stood with her arms crossed, a Meridian Veil lanyard around her neck, watching Caleb walk toward her like she was watching a man walk out of a burning building. Mr. Grant. Miss Ellis, I believe we had a meeting scheduled for 11 o'clock. We still do. But first I need to make a phone call. She nodded once, didn't ask questions, just pointed toward a quieter corner near the windows. Caleb dialed his chief of staff, Monica Davis. She picked up on the first ring. Monica, I need 3 things. Pull the AltaView preferred carrier agreement. Don't send the termination yet. Hold it. Get me the CEO's office, Gregory Hollister. Tell his assistant I'll be at their Denver regional hub by 10:30, and I'd like 20 minutes of his time. Tell her it's about Flight 1202. Tell her I have a witness. Tell her I have video. Monica didn't even hesitate. Sir, are you all right? I'm fine, Monica. Clear my morning, and get legal on standby. He hung up, turned to Catherine. I'm sorry, you didn't sign up for this. Mr. Grant. She tilted her head. I sat in seat 2B for 3 hours and watched a grown man get told his skin color didn't belong in a paid seat. Whatever I signed up for, I'm in it now. Where are we going? He smiled, very faintly. You're coming with me? I'd like to, yes. Why? Because if Meridian Veil is about to be your business partner, I want to see how you handle this. And because I think whoever's at the other end of this morning deserves to see the face of the person who recorded it. Caleb looked at her for a long moment. Then he nodded. All right, let's go. The Meridian Veil car service was waiting at the curb, a black SUV, driver in a suit. Catherine slid in first. Caleb followed. As soon as the doors closed, she pulled out her phone. Do you want to see it? Please. She played the video. 47 seconds. Crisp picture. Audible voices. Ashley's words came through like a gunshot in the leather silence of the car. First class isn't for people like you.
Caleb watched the whole thing without blinking. Then he watched it again.
Can you send me a copy? Right now? Already done. His phone buzzed. He opened the file. saved it to 3 different cloud folders, forwarded it to Monica, forwarded it to his general counsel, forwarded it to himself. Then he looked up. Catherine, I owe you an honest answer before we walk into any room together. Our contract, the partnership we're signing today, one of the clauses was a preferred carrier designation. Altaview was the carrier. That clause is dead. It died in seat 34E. Meridian Vale didn't do anything wrong, and the deal itself is still on. But if you were counting on that carrier clause for anything at all, I need you to tell me now. She thought about it for a long moment, looked out the window at the Denver skyline. Mr. Grant, I'm the regional VP of a hotel company that talks about dignity in every marketing deck we make. If you sign that clause after what I just watched, I'd have resigned by Friday. Tear it up. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just do it right. The SUV pulled up in front of a 7-story glass building. Altaview Airlines, Regional Operations Center, Denver. The logo, a white wing over a mountain, gleamed in the morning sun. Caleb stepped out, straightened his tie, took a breath, and walked through the front door of a company he owned more of than anyone else on earth. The receptionist behind the front desk was a young woman with a corporate smile already half-formed. She glanced up, saw Catherine's Meridian Vale lanyard first. Smile widened. Then she saw the name on Caleb's business card as he slid it across the marble. The smile didn't just fall. It evaporated. Mr. Grant, sir, we weren't expecting you until next quarter for the board visit. Catherine's eyebrows lifted 1 careful millimeter. Board visit? Caleb didn't answer. He just said, very politely, "Could you let Mr. Hollister know I'm here? And a conference room with a screen, please, whichever one's closest." She was already dialing. Her hand was shaking. 4 minutes later, Gregory Hollister came around the corner at something just short of a run. CEO of Altaview Airlines, 58 years old, silver hair, good suit, tie slightly crooked because he'd tied it in an elevator. 2 senior vice presidents trailed behind him, one of them still pulling on a blazer. "Caleb!" Hollister's voice was too bright. "Caleb, I didn't know you were in town. What a surprise! What can I help you with?" Catherine watched this with her arms folded, face completely blank. In her head, she was already rearranging everything she thought she knew about the last 4 hours. Caleb shook Hollister's hand. Firm. Brief. "Gregory, thanks for making time. This is Catherine Ellis, Regional VP at Meridian Vale Hotels. She's here as my witness. Could we sit down?" The conference room was glass on 3 sides, a long table, a screen on the wall. Hollister sat at the head, out of habit, then, realizing something, shifted 1 seat to the side. Caleb took the head. He set down his notebook, set down his phone, looked at Catherine, looked at Hollister. "Gregory, before we start, Catherine, I owe you a proper introduction. I haven't been entirely straight with you about who I am." He turned his body to face her. Grantford Hospitality Group isn't just a hotel company. 3 years ago, we acquired, quietly, a 19% stake in Altaview Airlines through our parent holding company, Grantford Capital. Last month, we closed on an additional 14%. As of last Monday morning, I am, personally, the single largest shareholder of Altaview Airlines. And I have a confirmed seat on this company's board of directors, effective the next shareholder meeting in 18 days. Catherine didn't move. She just stared at him. Caleb kept going. Gregory already knew. That's why he came down the stairs so fast. Hollister's face had gone the color of old paper. "Caleb, please, whatever happened, we'll handle it, internally, today. You have my word." "Gregory, I'm going to tell you exactly what happened, and then we're going to handle it together. And Catherine is going to watch every second of it, because Meridian Vale deserves to know who it's about to climb into bed with."
He opened the notebook, thumbed past the first page, stopped at the second. I flew your flight 1202 this morning, seat 2A, paid fare, booked under my own name, through my own corporate account.
I wore a charcoal suit and a hoodie because it was cold at 4 in the morning in Atlanta. I was seated for 46 minutes before a passenger named Bradley Whitaker, who, based on what I heard him say on the phone, was not entitled to that seat, informed your flight attendant, Ashley Morgan, that the seat was his. He turned the page. Ms. Morgan, in a cabin of 13 witnesses, without consulting a manifest, without consulting a boarding pass, without consulting a single document, looked me in the face and said, and Catherine, please correct me if I misquote, "First class isn't for people like you." Catherine's voice was soft, steady. That's verbatim. Your captain, Donald Hughes, came out of the cockpit, did not ask me for my side, did not check the manifest, threatened me with the federal no-fly list by noon. I was moved to seat 34E, middle seat, last row, next to the lavatory.
Hollister closed his eyes, just for a second. Here's what I want you to hear, Gregory. I wasn't on that plane by accident. I chose that flight because Altaview is Meridian Vale's preferred carrier, because Grantford was finalizing a corporate travel contract with your airline this week, and yes, because I wanted to see. Not a report, not a focus group, not a quarterly DEI slide in a boardroom.
I wanted to see, in my own seat, how your airline treats a black man in first class when nobody in that cabin knows who he is. He paused. Your airline failed the test, Gregory. In front of a witness who is now the regional vice president of the hotel company I'm about to sign a $120 million partnership with. He slid his phone across the table, pressed play. Ashley's voice came through the conference room speakers. First class isn't for people like you. Hollister actually flinched. One of the senior vice presidents put her hand over her mouth. Caleb let the video play all the way through, didn't speak over it, didn't narrate, just let it breathe in the glass room. When it ended, he looked at Hollister. The preferred carrier clause in our Meridian Vale partnership was worth $120 million to Altaview over 4 years. It was going to be the anchor contract for your Denver hub after the merger. That clause is gone, Gregory. I deleted it on the jet bridge. Catherine signed off in the car. Hollister sat down very slowly. His hands were flat on the table in front of him, like a man bracing for a wave. Caleb, what do you want? Caleb closed the notebook. I want to fix your airline, Gregory, from the inside, starting today, because I own enough of it now to force the door open. And most of the people your crew treated the way they treated me this morning. They can't. That's the part we're going to change. The conference room was very, very quiet. Outside, somewhere over the hub, a plane was taking off. Hollister tried to stand up. Caleb, let me get HR down here. Let me get the union rep. Let me... Sit down, Gregory. He sat down. Here's what's going to happen. I don't want Ashley Morgan fired by a press release tomorrow morning. That's cheap. That's theater. That lets this company pretend one bad apple fell off the tree, and the tree is fine. The tree is not fine. Caleb turned to the senior vice president on his left. What's your name? Rebecca Moore, sir, SVP of In-Flight Operations. Ms. Moore, I want 4 things on this table within 1 hour. 1. Ms. Morgan's full employment file. 2. Captain Hughes's. 3. Every formal passenger complaint filed against either of them in the last 24 months. 4. Your chief data officer, on a video call, with access to your reseating and upgrade logs. Not next week. Today. Now. Yes, sir. She was already on her phone. Caleb looked at Hollister. I'm also bringing in an independent DEI auditor, paid out of Grantford's pocket, not yours,
I don't want anyone in this building able to say later that the audit was cooked. Her name is Dr. Yvonne Washington. She'll be on the ground in Denver by 2 o'clock. She'll have full access. No NDAs. No redactions. Hollister nodded. He didn't argue. He had no cards left to play, and he knew it. 40 minutes later, AltaView's chief data officer came up on the wall screen. A woman named Patricia Anderson. Glasses, no makeup, the face of somebody who'd been pulled out of a meeting and told to run a query that was going to break her week. Mr. Hollister, Mr. Grant, I ran the preliminary pull you asked for. I need to give a caveat. This is 20 minutes of work. It's not a full analysis. Understood, Caleb said. What did you find? Patricia took a breath. Across all AltaView flights in the last 24 months, in first-class cabins, Black passengers are 4.3 times more likely to be asked to verify their ticket after being seated. They are 6.1 times more likely to be involuntarily relocated from a confirmed first-class seat than a white passenger with the same fare class and frequent flyer status. Nobody spoke. Patricia kept going because she was a professional, and professionals finished the briefing. I also pulled Miss Morgan's individual record because it was flagged. Over the last 2 years, Ashley Morgan has granted 14 off-book complimentary first-class upgrades to white frequent flyers. 6 of those upgrades displaced a paid passenger. All 6 of the displaced passengers were black. Hollister put his face in his hands. Caleb didn't. He just wrote it down. Thank you, Patricia. Stay available, please. The screen went dark. Catherine, who had been silent for 20 minutes, finally spoke. Mr. Hollister, how did this not get caught? Caleb answered for him, softly. Because the people it happened to either didn't complain, or when they did, nobody believed them. I'm only standing in this room because I could afford to document it, and I own enough of this airline to force the conversation. Most people can't. That's the part we're going to fix. At 11:40, they brought Ashley Morgan up from crew rest. She walked into the conference room, still in her uniform. Pressed slacks, silk scarf, wings pin on her lapel. She had clearly been told nothing about why. She saw Hollister first, then Rebecca Moore. Then, as her eyes swept the table, she saw Caleb. And she stopped walking. Her face did 3 things in the space of a breath. Confusion, recognition, then something that looked almost like nausea. You were a passenger. Sit down, Miss Morgan. She sat, very carefully, like the chair might not hold her. Caleb didn't raise his voice, not once during the entire conversation. He didn't need to. Miss Morgan, before we start, I want you to understand something. I am not angry at you. I am sad. I am sad because 11 years ago, this company handed you a uniform and a set of wings and a tremendous amount of power over complete strangers. And somewhere in those 11 years, you decided that power was a weapon you got to use. Her eyes were already filling. Sir, I thought he was in the wrong seat. Caleb slid his boarding pass across the table. Crisp. Paper. Dated this morning. Name clearly printed. Seat 2A. Miss Morgan, did you check this? At any point? Before you told a paying passenger that he didn't belong in the seat he paid for? Silence. Did you check, Miss Morgan? No, sir. Why not? She opened her mouth, closed it. The tears spilled. I didn't think I needed to. The room didn't move. Catherine closed her eyes. Hollister looked at the table. Caleb let the sentence sit there, in the middle of the conference room, like the body of something small and honest she had just laid down on the carpet. Ms. Morgan, thank you for telling me the truth. That is the first honest thing anyone at this airline has said to me today. I want you to hold on to that. You're going to need it in the days ahead. They brought Captain Hughes in next. He came in with his shoulders squared, already defensive, already rehearsing. Mr. Grant, with respect, my crew made a judgment call under operational pressure and... Caleb just pressed play on Catherine's video. Hughes watched himself, 30,000 feet up, in uniform, threatening a sitting passenger with the federal no-fly list without having looked at a single document. The speech he'd rehearsed died on his tongue. Captain, one question. Did you check the manifest before you threatened to end a man's ability to fly commercially in this country for the rest of his life? Hughes's jaw worked. No, Mr. Grant. I should have. Yes, Captain. You should have. Bradley Whitaker was harder. They located him through his AltaView loyalty account, which pinged his hotel check-in downtown.
When AltaView corporate security called his room and politely asked him to come in, he came in yelling about lawyers. He stopped yelling the moment he saw Caleb at the head of the table. Mr. Whitaker, your complimentary first-class upgrade on Flight 1202 was not authorized by the booking system. It was granted off-book by Ms. Morgan, in direct violation of AltaView policy. Your Diamond loyalty status is suspended pending review. You are welcome to fly with us again in economy. Good day.
Bradley opened his mouth, closed it, left. At 2 o'clock, Dr. Yvonne Washington walked into the building with a team of 3. By 4, she had preliminary findings. By 6, she had a framework. She sat down across from Caleb and Hollister and laid out 6 reforms, and Caleb adopted every single one on the spot. 1. Mandatory manifest verification on a handheld tablet with a digital signature before any passenger in any cabin can be involuntarily reseated. No exceptions. No captain overrides without written documentation. 2. Audio capture in every first-class galley retained for 30 days, reviewable by the passenger experience team. 3. A quarterly third-party bias audit of reseating and upgrade patterns. Public, published, comparable year over year. 4. An anonymous passenger reporting line routed entirely outside AltaView corporate through Dr. Washington's firm with a guaranteed 72-hour response. 5. Mandatory retraining for every flight attendant and captain in the company, tied to annual recertification. No recertification, no wings. 6. A restitution fund seated at $12 million for every passenger identifiable in Patricia's data as having been improperly downgraded or removed over the last 24 months. Checks plus written apologies. Signed by Hollister personally. Caleb didn't smile. He didn't celebrate. He just turned to Hollister. Gregory, you announce this in 48 hours, with Dr. Washington standing next to you. Not behind you, next to you. If a single reporter asks whether this was forced on you by a shareholder, you answer yes. You do not lie. Are we clear? We're clear. Catherine, quietly, slid a pin across the table. It was 2 minutes past 7 in the evening when Caleb finally walked out of that conference room. Denver was gold behind the glass. The building was mostly empty. He found Jasmine Brooks's study planner in his bag. She'd dropped it somewhere between the jet bridge and the SUV, and he made a mental note to mail it back to her. Plus, something else. 48 hours later, at 9 in the morning, Mountain Time, Gregory Hollister walked into the briefing room of AltaView's Denver headquarters and stood at a podium next to Dr. Yvonne Washington. Not behind her, next to her. Just like Caleb had told him. He didn't read from a crisis comms script. He'd thrown that out the night before. 2 days ago, he began, a paying passenger on AltaView Flight 1202 was removed from his confirmed first-class seat and told by a member of our crew that first class was not for people like him. That passenger was black, The crew member did not verify a manifest. The captain did not verify a manifest. Nobody on that aircraft in a position of authority treated that passenger as a customer. They treated him as a problem. And I am here this morning to tell you that AltaView Airlines failed that passenger. The investigation is not ongoing. It is concluded. Here is what we found, and here is what we are doing. The room of reporters went very still. This was not the statement they had been expecting. He named the reforms, all 6 of them. He named the $12 million restitution fund. He named Dr. Washington and gave her the microphone. Ashley Morgan, that same morning, received a certified letter at her apartment in Atlanta. Termination for cause. 11 years of service ended in a single paragraph. The letter did not call her a racist. It did not editorialize. It simply cited policy, the policies she had, in her own words, not thought she needed to follow. Captain Donald Hughes received a 90-day unpaid suspension, mandatory bias retraining, and a demotion from senior captain status. He would never sit left seat on a transcontinental again. 2 mid-level managers, the ones whose names surfaced in Patricia Anderson's data as having buried earlier complaints against Ashley, were separated from the company that same afternoon. Bradley Whitaker's loyalty account was closed permanently. His name went on an internal watch list. He would fly AltaView again only as a last resort, and only in coach. The Department of Transportation opened a parallel civil rights review within a week. AltaView did not fight it. AltaView opened its books. On the 4th day after the flight, in a quiet office in Midtown Atlanta, Caleb Grant and Catherine Ellis signed the Grantford Meridian Vale Partnership. $120 million over 4 years. Full value, full stop. The preferred carrier clause, where AltaView's name used to be, was blank. Catherine noticed it as she signed. She didn't say anything. She just tapped the empty line twice with her pen. Caleb smiled, very small. They'll earn it back. Or they won't. 18 days later, Caleb walked into his first AltaView board meeting. He did not give a speech. He did not lecture. He pulled one object out of his briefcase and slid it across the polished table toward Gregory Hollister. A framed photograph, black and white, 1986. A skinny boy in church clothes standing next to a mechanic in a grease-stained uniform outside an Atlanta terminal. My father, Caleb said. He was refused service at an airline lounge in this very city. The gate agent told him he must have the wrong ticket. He kept the boarding pass his whole life. I keep it in my desk drawer. He let that sit for a moment. I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty, gentlemen. I'm telling you this because I don't ever want an AltaView board to hear a story like mine and think it's rare. It's not rare. It's just rarely documented. That's the part we change now. Nobody spoke. A few people nodded. One senior director cleared his throat and said, quietly, "Understood, Mr. Grant." In a small one-bedroom apartment in Atlanta, Ashley Morgan sat on the edge of her couch watching the AltaView press conference on the local news. She didn't cry this time. She just watched. The reporter asked Hollister, toward the end, whether the reforms were forced on him. Hollister paused. Then he said, very clearly, "Yes, they were, and they should have been forced on me a long time ago." The camera cut away before anyone could follow up. Ashley turned off the television, looked at her wings pin on the coffee table, and sat in a silence nobody in this story gets to eavesdrop on. 2 weeks after the flight, a plain envelope arrived at Emory University, addressed to a second-year nursing student named Jasmine Brooks. Inside was a letter from a small foundation she'd never heard of, informing her that the remainder of her tuition, all 3 years, had been covered in full by an anonymous donor. At the bottom of the letter, in blue ink, handwritten, "Thank you for the water, a fellow passenger." She read it 3 times. Then she called her mother, and they both cried. Caleb Grant didn't win because he was rich. He won because he was prepared. Because the moment a gate agent in Atlanta asked for his ID a second time, he opened a notebook. He didn't shout. He didn't threaten. He wrote down a time and a name, and he kept writing, all the way to the last row of a Denver-bound airplane, because he had lived long enough in his own skin to recognize the pattern as it was happening to him. And he won, because a woman in seat 2B, a woman who had every reason to look away, every reason to mind her business, every reason to pretend she hadn't heard, decided instead that her phone camera was a civic duty. One quiet tap of a record button. 47 seconds of footage. A business card slid under a tray table somewhere over Kansas. That's the whole mechanism. That's the entire machine. The reforms at AltaView are real in this story. Mandatory manifest checks, audio in the galleys,
quarterly audits, an anonymous reporting line that doesn't answer to the people being reported, a restitution fund with real checks and real apologies, a board that, for the first time in its history, has a member in the room whose father was once turned away from one of its lounges with a boarding pass in his pocket that was perfectly valid. Ashley Morgan had 11 years to become somebody different than the woman who snapped her fingers in Caleb Grant's face. She didn't. Captain Donald Hughes had 30 seconds standing in the aisle to ask one simple question. "May I see your boarding pass, sir?" He didn't ask it. Those are not complicated failures. Those are small, daily, human failures, the kind the system tolerates until somebody with enough leverage refuses to let it. That's what changed that morning. Not the world. Just one airline. Just one boardroom. Just one scholarship fund for one nursing student who offered a stranger a bottle of water. But one is how it starts. Man, listen. This story's fiction. But that humiliation, that verify your ticket energy, that's real for somebody out there. Imagine paying for your seat and still being told you don't belong in it. Yeah, sit with that for a second, and you'll feel sick. If this story moved you, hit that like button. It genuinely helps stories about dignity reach people who need them. Subscribe for more cases where the quiet ones get the last word. Share this with somebody who's ever been told they didn't belong in a seat they'd already paid for. And remember, the receipts always exist. The only question is who's brave enough to read them out loud.